The night had no edges here. It began without warning, soft as a breath, folding around the quiet world like silk. Somewhere past the line of trees, a river waited, patient, unmoving. Its surface smooth as glass, a thin mist hovered above it, low and white. It clung to the reeds and drifted through the lantern glow, curling like thought. The stars had gathered high above, unblinking and watchful. Some hung bright and sharp, others blurred at the edges, softened by the haze. The traveler came down the narrow dirt path that led from the forest. Their steps were slow. The air smelled of damp earth, pine needles, and something faintly sweet, maybe the memory of rain. Every sound was distant. The whisper of insects, a frog's hollow note, the faint crackle of leaves underfoot. When they reached the water, the world seemed to pause. The river stretched out in both directions, disappearing into shadow. Its surface, a mirror of the stars. It didn't move quickly, not tonight. It drifted as though half asleep, as though the night itself had told it to slow down. A small wooden boat waited at the dock. It was tied loosely, swaying with the smallest motion, bumping softly against the post. The traveler crouched beside it, running a hand along the edge. The wood was cool, smooth, and slightly damp. A single lantern hung from the bow. Its light trembled each time the wind changed, painting the boards in uneven gold. It wasn't enough to push back the darkness, only enough to make it gentle. The traveler stepped inside, the boat rocking under their weight. For a heartbeat, the wood groaned softly, then settled. The sound of the forest dimmed. The river's voice took over, a faint, constant murmur, like a lullaby, too quiet to sing aloud. They untied the rope, letting it slip through their hands. The moment it left the post, the boat began to move. No effort, no sound, just the current taking hold, quiet and sure. The dock began to drift backward, swallowed by darkness, until only the faint outline remained. And then, even that was gone. The traveler leaned back against the wooden seat. They could feel the grain under their palms, the subtle rise and fall as the boat breathed with the water. Above, the stars looked close enough to touch. The sky had become a vast reflection of the river, or maybe the river a reflection of the sky. It was hard to tell which one was real anymore. The night air brushed against their skin. They closed their eyes for a moment, listening. Each sound found its own place. The slow push of water under the hull, the distant hum of crickets, the soft rustle of grass along the banks. Every small noise carried warmth, like the earth itself was whispering reassurance. A deep breath rose and fell in their chest, then another and another, each one slower, softer, steadier, thoughts that had followed them down the path. Those small, fluttered things that never quite stopped speaking began to fade. One by one, they slipped away, quiet as ripples fading into still water. The traveler let the silence take over. It wasn't empty. It had weight, warmth, presence. It filled the chest in a way words never could. Somewhere far above, a single star moved, sliding slowly across the sky. For a moment, the traveler watched it pass between the branches, its reflection gliding beneath the boat at the same time. The two lights moved together, sky and river perfectly in sync, until the star disappeared beyond the tree line. The traveler smiled faintly. They didn't know why. Maybe it was the quiet, maybe the relief of being nowhere in particular. With no reason to move faster than the river wanted, the air had cooled more now, brushing against their face and hands, bringing the faint scent of night flowers from the distant shore. The traveler drew the blanket closer around their shoulders. The fabric soft against the skin. The flame in the lantern fluttered again, then steadied, just enough to keep its promise of warmth. Time lost its edges too. Minutes, hours, they didn't matter here. There was only this slow, floating moment that didn't need to lead anywhere. The traveler whispered softly, though no one was there to hear. The sound disappeared into the dark like a pebble into deep water. The river kept moving, its surface catching the faint light of stars, silver, blue, and pale gold, scattered like dust over dark silk. And as the boat glided further into the heart of the night, the traveler felt the last thin layer of wakefulness begin to soften. Not sleep yet, but that space before it when the world begins to fade at the edges and everything feels safe enough to let go. The river widened as it carried the traveler forward. The banks faded into shadows, replaced by the low hum of night, that quiet language of water, insects, and faraway wind through trees. The current moved with purpose, but not hurry. It knew where to go, and it took its time getting there. The boat drifted in its care like something being carried by thought every few moments. The traveler dipped a hand into the water. It was cool, not cold, the kind of cool that seemed to lift the warmth from the skin. Ripples spread outward, catching the faint lantern light and scattering it across the surface. Each movement made the stars tremble in their reflection, as though the sky itself had sighed. The traveler watched the light play and fade. It was strange how simple things could feel eternal in silence, how the sound of gentle ripples could quiet the mind more deeply than any voice ever had. A night bird crossed the sky, wings catching the faint starlight. Its shape slid across the water surface for an instant before vanishing into the dark again. The traveler followed its path with their eyes, but it disappeared before they could find it. The air around the river seemed different here. It carried a soft sweetness, maybe the scent of wildflowers blooming unseen along the far bank. Every breath filled the chest with something clean, something unspoken. The traveler leaned back and looked upward. Above, the constellations burned faintly in their endless patterns. Some stars gathered close like clusters of fireflies. Others drifted far apart, lonely and still. The sight drew something calm from inside the traveler. Not thought, not memory, just quiet awareness. The oar, resting at the side of the boat, touched the surface now and then. Slow and rhythmic, more for the sound than the motion. Each stroke made a hollow whisper, a low wooden sigh that blended with the river's breathing. Somewhere downstream, the sound of water changed, a low murmur, like a promise waiting ahead. It wasn't loud enough to disturb, just enough to remind that the river was alive, moving, taking them deeper into the night. The stars reflected so clearly now that it was hard to tell where water ended and sky began. The boat seemed suspended between two worlds, floating in a space made of mirrored light and air. The traveler watched their own reflection move with the stars, slightly distorted by ripples. They lifted a hand. The image followed, blurred by motion. For a moment, it felt like they were part of both the water and the sky, as though the river had drawn them into its stream. The current turned slightly, curving around a bend where the shore disappeared behind clusters of reeds. A soft sound of frogs came and went. The boat moved slower now, its pace easing until even time seemed to rest. The lantern's flame flickered. Its glow painted the inside of the boat in soft, uneven shades, warm gold against deep shadow. The traveler watched the light sway with each breath of wind, listening to the faint hiss of the flame. The river seemed to respond. Every small sound, the creak of wood, the faint splash of water, came together like notes of a quiet song. It was a melody made not for the ears, but for something deeper, something that listened with the whole body. The traveler closed their eyes again. The rhythm of the river entered their chest, in, out, soft, steady. The body began to match it without effort. Shoulders dropped. Hands rested loosely on the fabric of the blanket. The world around them blurred. Not gone, not distant, just softened, like paint brushed gently into water. The night no longer seemed like something outside of them. It had become part of their breathing. A thought passed briefly through their mind, that maybe this was what peace actually felt like. Not the absence of sound or motion, but the perfect balance of both. The stillness that moves, the quiet that hums with life. Somewhere far off, lightning flickered, silent, pale, too distant to bring fear. For a second, it illuminated the far side of the river, tall grass bending in the wind, the hint of white blossoms nodding in the dark. Then it was gone, leaving only the calm again. The traveler exhaled slowly, the air leaving their lungs like a tide. The river accepted it, carrying it away with the current. The sound of the water brushed against the edges of sleep. And for a moment, the traveler wasn't sure if they were still awake or already drifting through dreams. The night had settled into its own breathing now, slow, even, gentle as the hush that follows a whisper. The traveler sat still for a while, watching the edge of the lantern's light tremble across the rippling water. The boat moved so slowly that it was easy to forget it was moving at all. Each tiny sway felt like the river's hand, keeping time with the rhythm of their heart. The sky was alive with quiet motion, small threads of clouds sliding past the stars, thin and silver. A breeze stirred, brushing across the traveler's cheek, carrying the smell of water, of leaves, of night itself. They drew in a slow breath. The air filled the lungs with a cool softness. Then it left again, easy, natural. Each exhale seemed to dissolve something unseen, tension stored in the shoulders, behind the eyes, in the jaw. All those small things the day had left behind were being carried off, piece by piece, into the dark. They let their eyes fall half shut. The river hummed in quiet tones, and the sounds of the world grew rounder, dimmer, deeper. Another breath, and another. The body began to feel weightless. Not gone, just light, like it was being held by the air. The hands rested loosely in the lap, palms open. The feet relaxed, toes no longer curled against the wood. The mind started to drift too. Thoughts that had clung tight all evening now moved slower, like leaves caught in a gentle current. They came and went, harmless, dissolving before they reached the shore. The traveler felt the edges of their awareness blur, as though the self was softening into something larger. The river whispered to them, not in words, but in a feeling that moved through the body like warmth spreading from the chest outward. It said, "You can rest now," and they did. The stars above reflected in their eyes, shimmering faintly. The faint splash of water against the boat became part of their breathing, sinking perfectly. Inhale, the river lifts. Exhale, it settles again. Somewhere nearby, the low hum of crickets filled the air with a steady rhythm. It was the kind of sound that never demanded attention, only offered presence. The traveler leaned their head back and looked upward again. The constellations had shifted slightly since they'd left the dock, small proof that time was still passing. even here, even in this stillness. But it didn't matter. Nothing needed to be counted anymore. Their breath deepened once more, long and steady. The night responded. The wind quieted. The water slowed, smoothing out until it felt like glass beneath the boat. Everything began to move together. Sky, air, river, breath. One quiet pattern, repeating without end. In the distance, faint echoes rose from the reeds. Maybe frogs, maybe the soft croak of a heron hidden in the dark. It was impossible to tell, and it didn't matter. The sounds folded into the river's lullaby. One voice among many. The traveler's body now felt as though it was dissolving into the motion, as if they were no longer being carried by the river, but with it, their mind drifted gently, following the current of sound. Soft ripples, quiet air, the steady flicker of the lantern flame. Somewhere in that quiet, they felt something familiar, a sense of being washed over, not by eyes, but by presence. The river itself seemed to hum with it, that subtle promise that everything was safe, that rest was allowed. The traveler smiled again, faintly. The muscles around their mouth moved slowly, almost lazily, as though they too were half asleep. Their breathing deepened once more, slow, soft, quiet enough to merge with the sound of the river, and then came stillness again, a kind that wasn't empty but full, a kind that felt like being home. The river curved gently toward open water, and the sky widened with it. The trees along the banks thinned until the view was nothing but stars and reflection. A vast, calm space where everything shimmered faintly in shades of blue and silver. The traveler lifted their gaze. Above them, the stars burned quietly, scattered across the darkness like a million small fires, kept alive by the cold. Some blinked faintly, others shone clear and steady, their light crossing lifetimes before reaching this quiet place. For a while, the traveler simply looked. No thoughts came, only that quiet awe that rises when the world reminds you how wide it really is. The stars didn't seem far away here. They seemed near, as though the sky had lowered itself to meet the river halfway. The boat floated in that reflection, moving so slowly that the water barely stirred. It felt as though the stars themselves were carrying it forward. A light breeze passed, bending the surface just enough to make the reflections ripple. The stars began to shimmer and dance, their shapes melting into one another, stretching, softening, reforming. It was like watching the universe breathe. The traveler reached out, fingertips brushing the water. Tiny points of reflected starlight broke apart scattering into waves that shimmered before fading. The touch was cool, smooth, alive. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet warmth grew. Not excitement, something gentler. Gratitude, maybe. Or belonging. The stars above seemed to move closer in answer. Their glow was soft enough to calm the eyes, bright enough to see by. Each one felt like a heartbeat, faint but constant. The traveler began tracing shapes between them, lines that connected one faint glow to the next. They remembered none of the names, none of the old stories tied to them, but that didn't matter. Tonight, they belonged only to this sky, this river, this drifting. A pale band of light cut across the heavens, the faint stretch of the Milky Way. A river of stars mirroring the one below. Two rivers moving side by side, one made of water, one made of light. The traveler's eyes softened. The thought lingered that maybe both rivers were the same, flowing endlessly through different worlds. The boat drifted through their reflection like a dream. Every small sound, the creak of the wood, the whisper of the current, felt slower now, more distant, like echoes of another time. A soft feeling rose through the body. It wasn't sleep yet, but close, that floating calm that comes when the mind has nothing left to hold on to. The traveler felt safe, utterly, quietly safe. They closed their eyes again. The stars remained behind the lids, glowing faintly in the darkness of their mind. Each one pulsed softly, in time with their heartbeat. A thought passed, not in words, but in the shape of feeling. The universe is vast, but it holds me to dot, and in that realization, something inside the chest loosened. The edges of self dissolved again. No longer a person floating on a river, but a small, breathing part of the same calm that surrounded everything. A single star burned brighter than the rest, a slow pulse of white light above the horizon. It flickered, then held steady, as if marking the direction of the current dot. The traveler opened their eyes just long enough to see it. The star's reflection trembled on the water, long and thin, guiding the boat onward like a soft thread of light. The river followed that path. The current was so gentle now that the water seemed almost still. Yet the boat continued to move, guided by something unseen, effortless. Time became strange again. The minutes didn't pass so much as melt. The traveler couldn't tell if it had been hours or moments since the dock disappeared behind them. But none of it mattered anymore. The air grew cooler. The faint scent of moss and wildflowers drifted past, subtle, soothing. Somewhere in the dark, the chirp of crickets grew softer, slower, as if the night itself was falling asleep. The traveler's eyelids grew heavier. Each blink lasted longer. The stars blurred together, then apart again. The edges of the world softened, turning into one vast field of silver light and soundless motion. Their breath deepened, a long inhale, then a slow exhale. The sound of the river filled the spaces between Dot, and for a moment, the traveler thought they heard the stars whisper, not with voices, but through rhythm, faint, steady, like heartbeats echoing in the distance. Everything is all right. You are safe. You can rest now. The words weren't spoken, yet they filled the air, the body, the water. The traveler let go a little more. The hands relaxed completely. The breath became softer still. The sky stretched endlessly above. The water endlessly below. And between them, the traveler drifted, untouched by anything but calm. The river moved almost imperceptibly now. Each ripple that reached the side of the boat seemed to hesitate before breaking, as though the water itself had grown tired, ready to rest. The lantern's flame had dimmed to a low, steady glow, more ember than fire. Its reflection swayed in the water, trembling with each breath of wind, then settling again. The traveler lay back, head resting against folded fabric. The wood beneath them was warm from the air, smooth beneath the touch of their fingers. Their eyes half opened, then closed again. The sky above had softened. Where stars once shone sharp and bright, now they blurred, light melting into haze, like candle wax drifting across glass. It wasn't that they had faded, only that the traveler's gaze had begun to drift inward to a gentler kind of seeing. The air was still. Even the insects had quieted, their songs tapering off until the silence felt full and complete. The sound of the river remained slow, even endlessly patient. The traveler breathed in. The air was cool, smooth, soft enough to calm even the smallest thoughts that remained. They breathed out. The air left them easily, taking the weight of the day with it. Their body had become light, untethered, the hands resting loosely at their sides, no longer needed to hold anything. The chest rose and fell without effort. The heartbeat moved slowly, softly, in rhythm with the current. The river cradled them, not as water holds weight, but as night holds quiet completely. Without demand, the traveler's thoughts had dissolved to almost nothing. Only the faint rhythm of breath remained, blending into the hush of the world around them. Every sound was far away now. The river, the trees, even the beating of the heart, all softened, all fading. The lantern flickered once more. Its glow spilled faintly across the traveler's face, then dimmed, leaving only starlight. The boat continued to move, but slower still, until the water seemed to carry it on the thinnest thread of motion. The traveler's eyes fluttered open one last time. Above, The stars were still there, endless, patient, unmoving. They seemed to be watching, though not with eyes, with presence, with care. The traveler's lips curved slightly, almost imperceptibly, into a tired smile. A whisper left them, not words, just breath, barely audible, and then stillness. The boat drifted further, deeper, into the open water, until the river and sky merged into a single, infinite quiet. No more lantern, no more edges, only calm, only the slow rhythm of the world breathing. The traveler slipped fully into rest, not sleep at first, but the space before it, where the mind and body agreed to stop. Then, gently, even that faded too. The river continued its quiet motion, carrying them onward through the reflection of stars, a soft current of peace flowing endlessly into the night. And somewhere, far beyond sight or sound, the first trace of dawn waited, still hidden, still far away, content to let the night have its silence a little longer. The world breathed once more, and then nothing but stillness.